Dayna Martin is an author and peaceful parenting advocate, spreading the message of freedom and children's rights. Author of the books Radical Unschooling, A Revolution Has Begun, and Sexy Birth. She's been featured on the Dr. Phil Show, Nightline, 60 Minutes, The Jeff Probst Show, and most recently, ABC's hit show, Wife Swap. Her articles, videos, and TV appearances have helped thousands of families on their path to live with more freedom, peace, and joy. We hear words like rebellion and chalk it up to normalcy. But what if there was nothing to rebel against? What if we lived with the same respect for our children that we demand they have for us? What if we could recognize that punishments model injustice, and that through using power to control another person, we are teaching them to do the same? It is through loving, kindness, and understanding that children learn love and peace, and in turn will reflect this back on the world. Respecting children's rights and freedoms is a revolutionary approach to parenting and education. This is a parenting philosophy on the leading edge of new thought, yet it is rooted in instinctual wisdom. Our culture needs to realize that living with respect and freedom with our children is the most responsible way to create a peaceful world.
Everything ready for me?
We are. It's just not. You can just use that.
Hello, this is Dayna Martin. Sorry it took me a minute there to get live. We have a major snowstorm happening here in New Hampshire right now. We have about 2 feet of snow coming down. It's one of those things. I'm going to give it a shot. We hope we get our whole show out here for you. But if I lose you, I'll do my best to come back. So welcome. Welcome to Try This at Home. We've had quite an interesting week this week. It's been kind of one of those non-creative weeks for myself. I've been, when you live a free life and you have choice to do whatever you want with your time and you're not living by a clock or a schedule, things tend to flow really organically, and that looks really different than what most people think it's going to look like. For me, I ebb and flow with every week, and some weeks I'm really, really creative and focused on my domestic role in our family. I make really exciting meals, and the house is looking awesome and totally clean. Everything's organized. And then other weeks, it's kind of the opposite. I can't say my house is trashed, but I'm not really as on top of it this week for some reason. Most of my focus is always on my kids and facilitating their learning and doing fun things together. But as far as like my personal time, my focus has kind of been in the virtual world, online. I've redesigned my website with the help of some friends and redesigned our family blog. So my focus has kind of been virtually, but it's hard to balance. And I think moms who are also advocates or having their own business at home, or dads too, it is a hard thing to balance when you have a family and you're all living together all the time. So it's been one of those weeks where I'm hoping I get my creative burst next week. I am traveling to Chicago the day after tomorrow. I'm speaking this Saturday at a conference. It's called the In-Home Conference. If you do a search for it on Google and try to find more information about it, I'd love to see you there. I'm doing 3 different sessions this Saturday. So my family, I'm getting them all ready for my time when I'm leaving. I have a bunch of crock pot meals ready to go in the fridge, so all Joe has to do is dinner will be all set for them. I love to make sure it's kind of, I know Joe could handle it. I know we could totally handle preparing food for everybody, but it's some kind of a comfort thing for me. Like I love making food when I'm traveling, just to know that everybody has that taken care of, and Joe only has to focus on being with the kids, playing with the kids, helping them, and just being a dad. So we have an interesting show tonight. Joe and Devin are trying to pull up. I'm actually on an iPad, so the audio's probably kind of crappy right now. They're trying to pull me up on the my laptop. So we have a show tonight about something really not a lot of people talk about, especially in the peaceful parenting, unschooling, freedom-based living community, and that's the aspect of teens having trouble going through difficulty in life. Well, I think a lot of people think that if they step into this life, because a lot of us talk about the joys of the teen years, we don't deal with rebellion. Devin has nothing to rebel against. We're his partner in life, and as is for most teens living in a partnership dynamic, but it doesn't make them superhuman to have freedom. It doesn't make them superhuman or to have a life of freedom and peace with their parents. I mean, stuff still comes up, and there's so much conditioning that could have happened before you pulled your child from school. There are so many layers of issues in our culture that we cannot protect teens from their authentic journey. And for some teens, it does mean alcohol abuse, drug abuse. And for this teen I'm going to talk to tonight, her name is Lizzie, and she is a friend of mine. I met her, I think, 4 years ago at the first conference that I ever ran in New Hampshire, her and her mom. And I recently found out that she was cutting. And I don't know if you've all heard of that. I actually hadn't really heard of it until recently, although people have been doing it for, since I was a teen, but it's really, really grown, I think, as a coping mechanism. So she's going to talk about it really candidly. I was so in awe that this amazing teen was willing to talk to me about this, and her mother too, and the difference in how they're handling it in comparison to an authoritarian paradigm and a traditional parenting dynamic is that the mother is in the state of support. I mean, obviously it's not a positive experience for either of them, but she's going to share how she's working through it with an unschooling, free life perspective. So I think it'll be really fascinating for people. I want to talk to you a little bit about what cutting is. Let's see. Self-injury, also known as self-harm or self-mutilation, is defined as an act where someone deliberately hurts or injures themselves. Self-injury is most often used as a coping mechanism, and it's not an attempt at suicide. The practice is not limited to teens. Self-harm in adulthood takes place, and it's not unusual. It's perplexing, this phenomenon. It has many names, and those who come across it, family members, friends, supporters, even many professionals, struggle to understand why people self-harm, and they find the behavior disturbing and puzzling. Recent reports imply that it's reaching epidemic proportions, particularly among young people. I have to agree on some level with this. I mean, I think that there's a lot of focus on it, of course, right now. I don't know what people consider epidemic proportions. My daughter, Tiffany, recently from a friend, heard about it and was really curious, and so she went to a few message boards. And I was so intrigued with the support that was out there from other teens for it, although it was a little disturbing. I mean, it felt to me as if it was promoting cutting, some of the information I found. But I know that there's pro-anorexia sites out there too, which really blew my mind. I don't know what that would have meant for me as a teen. I was anorexic for 3 years of my life. It was awful. When I look back on it with such dark energy, such darkness, that I wonder if I would have had other people to talk to about it that were doing it, if it would have been helpful to me, or would it have encouraged me more to continue, or I wouldn't feel so alone. I don't know. I'd love to hear your comments about this particular topic, and if you ever self-harmed. The number that you can call in tonight is 1-718-717-8296. And, feel free to call in and tell us your story. Recent reports imply that, like I said, it's reaching epidemic proportions, particularly among young people. Furthermore, research suggests that it's a frequent companion to eating disorders, alcohol abuse and drug abuse, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, borderline personality disorder, and dissociative disorders. Those caught in its clutches claim that self-injury is difficult to stop due to its highly addictive nature. Or they say they're reluctant to try because it helps them feel better, more in control, more real, or simply it keeps them alive. So what is self-injury? Self-injury is a way of dealing with very strong emotions. For some people, self-harm gives the relief that crying may provide for the rest of us. Some people who engage in self-mutilation feel they can't control highly angry and aggressive emotions. They become afraid and they may hurt someone. They become afraid that they may hurt someone, so they turn the aggression inward to get relief. People who self-harm may be defined as attention seekers, but a person who engages in self-injury may believe this is the only way to communicate their distress. Attention seeking may actually be their last motivation, as self-mutilation can be a hidden problem that goes on for years. Self-harming purely for attention is one of the big myths about self-injury. I'm glad that they said that in this article because it really bothered me that when people say it's for attention, I mean, what human being doesn't want attention or need attention in life? So to kind of say that, oh, they're really doing it for attention, well, they're obviously neglected or in some way, or they're not opening up to connecting with others. So interesting argument. So self-injury may start as a spur-of-the-moment outlet for anger and frustration, such as punching a wall, and then develop into a major way of coping with stress that, because it remains hidden, generates more stress. The severity of self-harm doesn't necessarily relate to the severity of the person who's self-injuring because they become more accustomed to the pain they inflict upon themselves, and so they harm themselves more severely to get the same level of relief. How do you cope? How did you cope as a teen with issues that you were dealing with? Did you drink? Were you sexually promiscuous? Did you practice any kind of self-harm, self-mutilation? I'd love to hear, so feel free to call in. As Joe and Devin work on my tech issues because of this major storm, I'm going to read some questions that I got and just answer some random questions until they get this all together for me. Okay, so nobody can call until I let you know, until they get the laptop. This is the adventures of live radio, folks. We deal with storms here in New Hampshire, and where Mary and Lizzie are calling from, they're dealing with major windstorms. So we're going to go with it. We're going to make the best of this, and we're going to see where this whole show goes. Let's see. One question that I got recently emailed. Have you always felt the way that you do about schooling? A girl named Christine sent this message to me. And if not, what changed your view? I'm getting my master's in education and work with students who have social, emotional, and behavioral differences. I love my job and have some diagnosis, just wondering. Well, I mean, I have always felt the way I do about school, but I guess I haven't always been able to define it as peaceful parenting or unschooling per se. I felt this way when I was in school. That's what started everything for me, was the injustice that I felt by needing to ask permission for just basic things. I hated gym class. I hated so much about it, but we all, I'm sure many of us, I could go on and on about what I didn't like about school, so I guess everything started that way for me. I haven't always felt this way about unschooling because I didn't really know about it initially. When I had Devin, I've shared the story about how he was born on Columbine. The Columbine shootings happened at the very moment I think I was holding him for the first time, and that was really powerful for me. I decided that, I wonder how many of these parents would have rather have been home with their children instead of being forced to send them to school. It just kind of got me thinking in a different direction. So I just began researching it. I discovered Waldorf education. It was so beautiful and so natural, and I loved the way it looked, and I was definitely like on a naturally minded path. We co-slept and breastfed, and I cloth diapered all the kids, and so I was definitely in that realm. Actually, I was just chatting with somebody this evening about it's interesting when you first become a mom, and if you're doing like the natural parenting thing, a lot of times you connect with a lot of moms, like at Lele Chili groups or attachment parenting groups, and everyone seems like they're on the same page. In fact, I find a lot of naturally minded moms like huge advocates, and just from living something so different. But what happens is, like, these kids get to be about 3 or 4 years old, and it seems like everything kind of changes. They tend to take a sharp left turn and become more controlling. And once children need to be, in school age, according to our cultural standards, parents start to change the way that they parented. So although a lot of moms, like, practice attachment parenting and they tune into their child's needs, and it seems like it all changes once the pressure really comes down on them. So I think our culture is more accepting of attachment parenting for babies, but once kids are able to toddle around, that control is really, really forced upon parents to control their kids and not work in partnership. So it can be really lonely when you're on this path of expansion and this journey of constantly becoming more and more aware and more conscious of children's rights. And there does come a time for a lot of us where you tend to lose friends, and it's because there's such a strong contrast between how you parent that we tend to get in judgment of others. I know that the times where I'm feeling judged by others, I have to really kind of self-check, because it's usually a time when I'm really judging others myself. It feels like it's always a mirror. Like when I'm really confident and I'm feeling great about myself, I'm more accepting of others. So a lot of times if I'm feeling judgmental toward others, I'm needing more reassurance or self-confidence. And when you realize that everyone's doing the best they can with what they know, I think this is an interesting community, though, because there are so many people who are so they're so against people doing parenting in any other way other than a more peaceful dynamic, that when they run up against it, they tend to really push up against it as opposed to accepting and finding a peaceful solution. Okay, I'm going to put you guys on hold 1 second while I click over to the other device. I need my mic. Hello, everybody. I'm back. I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, I'm good. I'm great. Yay! We fixed the tech problem. Okay. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, thanks for hanging with me, guys. So now we can take calls. So call into that number that I gave you earlier. I can repeat it. Let me get it right here. I love how the UCY TV network and crew are so laid back and so encouraging to when stuff like this happens. Because sometimes it's your fault and sometimes it's out of your control. Okay, hi, Mary. How are you? And Lizzie, are you both there?
I'm here. I thought.
Hey, Mary and Lizzie, this is Dayna. You're live on Try This.
Can you hear us?
How are you both tonight?
We're good. Can you hear us? Is the microphone working? No. Then you have to call them.
We can't hear you guys, so I don't know if you're muted. I think you're
we're on. Hold on.
Mute off.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Oh, this is Dayna. You guys there?
How do we type? How do we type and touch?
I don't know if you're muted, but we can't hear you.
Hold on.
We'll work through this, guys. Thanks for being patient.
Let us call in.
Must be an issue because of the storm. We'll get you on here.
Just exit out. Okay, so call the number. Ready? Oh, this is video.
Unplug your microphone. It's in the wrong thing. Hello?
Guys, are you there? Are you both there? This is Dayna.
I cannot call. What?
I
don't know.
Everybody in the work can hear us. That's ensuing here.
Nothing. I did nothing.
Are you there? Mary and Lizzie, are you both there?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Hey. Lizzie, can you hear me? Hello. Okay, so we're going to try this one more time. Thank goodness for edit. Okay, Lizzie, are you there? Oh, here we go. She's calling back in. Hello, this is Dayna. You guys there?
Hey, it's us.
Oh, good.
The
Don't
computer mic isn't working.
you love storms? Oh, so it was the computer a tech issue. Okay. Between the storm and that, we're golden then. If you guys have hung on, you live listeners so far, I applaud you. Thank you so much for dealing with our humanness. So, okay, I just want to introduce you guys. This is Mary, and this is Lizzie.
Hi. Hi.
Thanks for calling in tonight. So, Lizzie, I was just talking, I shared what self-injury was, and I talked about cutting and what it was. And, I mean, I guess we could just jump right into it and say thank you so much for coming in and being so vulnerable and so available to people listening. I think a lot of people think if they're unschooling their children or living a peaceful parenting dynamic that their kids are totally immune from something like this ever happening. Mary, did you ever think that Lizzie would go through or any of your kids would go through something like this?
Well, that's a hard question. Lizzie has her own background with exposure to public school, etc., that led her down the road of depression. So I can't say that I ever foresaw my cutting, but I can say that I have expected self-destructive behaviors, but I didn't know what they would be.
Now, do you think that Lizzie's experience with school early on had anything to do with any issues she's dealing with now?
Definitely.
Really?
From the source.
Yeah. Well, Lizzie, can you
school?
I'm sorry, sweet. Can you explain why?
At home shit. Early on.
Yeah.
There was divorce. There was, how much you want me to, domestic violence. Yeah, before, when she was very young. She was exposed to domestic violence. She was exposed to verbal abuse, other types of abuse. And even though I had left that situation when she was 2, she has what's known as pre-verbal memory.
Wow.
So she remembers things even before she could speak. So that has definitely attributed to it, I think, compounded by public school and the experiences that she has.
Wow, yeah, that's a really good point to bring up, actually, because not everybody that's come to this life is without having difficulty. I mean, even people who are living in a partnership parenting dynamic, some people are going through divorce, sometimes there is violence in the home, things happen. It doesn't guarantee that everything from the past was all perfect. So, wow. So, you dealt with, so that kind of goes to show though, Mary, that, what did you say it was? Pre-verbal memory?
Yes.
If people Google that, well, they could read more about it, but it goes to show how important those years are. Isn't it like the first year or 2 of life and that kids are deeply affected?
Yes.
Definitely. Okay. Well, Lizzie, thank you again so much for sharing. I mean, so you had a really difficult childhood early on, it sounds like, and witnessing your mother go through challenges too. When were you guys kind of out of the weeds with all of that? Like, when did things start getting better? How old were you?
Never. No, that's not true. She was 2 when we left, and then I was a single parent for 7 years. That sucked. I agree. That did suck. And then I married her stepdad 7.5 years ago.
And you guys are still together?
So, yes.
So Lizzie, so what you're dealing with now, I mean, so you were unschooled. When did you start unschooling? I mean, I know you're in a Sudbury school now, but
3 or 4 years ago.
Great. And then you're going to what? It's not really a Sudbury school. It's like a free school though, right?
Yeah, it's like a free learning kind of thing. You go and they offer classes and mentors.
So what are you dealing with inside now?
Right.
Like, emotionally?
Yeah, like what are, so tell me, so you cut. Can you explain to people listening what that means and what that's like?
I think, like, at least for me, I think it really depends on the person. Like, some people might cut because they think they're too fat, or because they think they're not good enough, or they just want to be dead.
Right.
But for me, it's kind of like another way to show your pain.
Is it something that you hope like somebody sees? Like your mom?
Well, not really. Like, when I do it, I don't want anyone to know, and yet I want everyone to know. It probably makes no sense, though.
Well, no, it does make sense. I mean, I think it's why a lot of people are anorexic. That's why I dealt with anorexia too. It's like you feel like split personality in a way. It's like you want to hide it, but at the same time you're crying out for help, and it's enough to make you crazy.
Yeah. Well, I am kind of anorexic too.
The article that I read a little bit earlier kind of touched on that. So what is, I want to hear more about that for sure. But with the self-injury, so this is what they call like non-suicidal self-injury. So, I mean, would you agree that it's like a non-suicidal, or are there days where you're feeling like?
No, it can definitely be suicidal. If you cut vertically, then you're dead. Like, they cannot stitch that up at the hospital.
How did you learn how to do this? I mean, is this something you learned how to do online, or did you just start doing it?
If you go online and you look up cutting, and they give you ways to do it. I mean, the internet is a scary place. Like, they can tell you how to kill yourself, how to cover it up, how to make so that nobody even suspects a thing, where you should do it, why, and in which direction.
So are you careful? I mean, when you do it, are you in that state of awareness that you're really making sure you don't do a deadly cut?
I do not do it to be suicidal.
So Mary, when you first noticed that Lizzie was doing this, like, can you walk me through the first time that you noticed?
Oh.
And what happened?
First time I started wearing long sleeves during the summer. Yeah, but considering that you're about 25 pounds underweight, that's not too unusual because you don't have that much body fat. She came to me on a Sunday night and she said, "Mom, I need to talk to you." And it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, okay. So when your kid comes to you at 11 o'clock at night and says they need to talk, you know it's serious.
Right.
And she pulled up her sleeves, and both of her forearms were covered in cuts from wrist to elbow.
Oh, my God.
And she crawled into bed with me, and she cried, and I held her, and we both cried. And I called the insurance line that we had, explained the situation, and told them that I needed the best psychiatric hospital available. So I got it covered. We drove the next morning to the psych hospital. My husband was not home. He was out of town, so it was just Elizabeth and myself and her younger sister who was sleeping. She told me that she felt suicidal, so I stayed up all night. I made a pot of coffee, and I watched her as she slept, and I cried while she slept. My husband came home the next morning by 11, and we all went in the car, and we brought her to the psych hospital, and she was then checked into the psych hospital. That's the easiest explanation. And she stayed there for, 10 days. It was the worst 10 days of my life. It was a state hospital. It wasn't a private hospital because Rich was unemployed at the time. No, I think it was... No, Silver Hills was when he was employed. I thought it was in there for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. No, it's 10 days. Oh. And it was horrible. And I cried every night. She got locked in rooms. It was a very, very violent ward. and she actually had to be in a room that had alarms on it so that she didn't feel, or she felt more safe because the girls in there were threatening to rape her and to hurt her.
They were not threatening.
Yes, they were.
So Lizzie, do you think,
Their eyes.
Okay.
Lizzie, do you think that helped you being in the hospital? Or do you think it made it worse?
Hell no. I'm not that hospital. Oh,
State hospitals don't work? Come on.
No
Crazy.
way. They give you a load of shit.
Scared the crap out of me.
I mean, like, you sit there and they basically tell you, use this one tool and it'll help you with everything. And yet, they don't realize that some of the kids in the hospital, their parents don't give a shit. And using that skill is not going to help them in any way. I actually, like, started this riot. Like, a bunch of these kids, the counselors, I asked them if they had any history of self-harm, and they said, well, that's personal. And yet you have to tell them everything about you. And, like, if they've never done it, they cannot even wrap their head around it.
Right.
And so then what gives them the right to tell us what is and isn't true? So then all the kids got all upset and I got pulled out. But
You caused an uprising. That's what happens with these free kids, I'll tell you. Mary, when you raise your kid in a partnership dynamic and you raise they really push up against the system, and it's obvious
they do.
Lizzie did not fit in with that dynamic for sure.
Yep. And I love it because then she
Yes.
questions and she thinks for herself.
and they don't like my questions.
I didn't say they had to.
They wanted you to just be obedient and take your drugs probably, right?
Yeah. Some of the kids would keep their pills under their tongue and sell them. But the thing is, at least for me, they would always check. Like, they would make me lift my tongue and stuff and check inside my cheek.
Oh, that's pretty intense. I mean, a lot of us see these kind of things in movies, but to hear about it sounds even worse than what they show in the movies.
Oh, definitely worse.
So I know for some teens or some people in general that when they're incarcerated, and that's essentially what you were, and I put no blame on Mary. My goodness, if anybody was in your shoes, you just want to do what's best for your child. You want to find them help. So I'm sure you came from that place 100%. But I mean, do you think it made you worse? Did you learn more skills to harm yourself more or what?
Yes and no. On one hand, you're exposed to kids that are a lot worse than you are, and that can kind of put your life in perspective. Like, I met these girls, and they must have been 13 to 15, and they had already had a kid, and they killed it, and they were laughing about it.
Oh my goodness.
And how they got raped and stuff, and it kind of brings you back into reality.
Yeah. I know for myself, I tried to take her out of the hospital within 24 hours because it was such a horrible situation. And they told me that if I did, they would petition the court and put her as a ward of the state.
After they said that you don't do a 3-day.
Right. Even after a 3-day stay, like a Baker's Act, 72 hours, they told me I could not take her, or else they would take her and put her in a ward of the state.
Did you know that when you signed her in there?
No, I did not.
So they didn't give you that information?
No, it was pretty horrible.
Wow. I mean, that comes down to basic parental rights. I've connected with somebody yesterday who I'm going to be working with locally on educating people about parental rights and the lack thereof, even here in the state of New Hampshire, the Free State. And so we're working more toward that. But that's pretty scary. That's intense.
It was horrible.
But the thing is, it can also be good because some of the girls there,
yeah, that's true. Their home life would not be where you'd want to bring them.
That, and some of them are actually pretty nice if you get to know them. They are completely misunderstood. And
yes,
at least how, I know this now, if you can make friends with the biggest, meanest person, you're safe. This big old fat black woman. I apologized to her for freaking out and not letting me go home. My stay was fine. She was
at my back.
I think we all learn these.
In a good way. Not like
Right, exactly. I think a lot of us learn those kind of tools of the game when we were in school, on who to connect with to keep you safe, on who to become to keep yourself safe. It's all survival tools, and you learn them early on.
It was good, like my last day in the psych ward, because one of my old friends got checked in, and that was really interesting to see her there. And we passed on the stairwell, and we just kind of looked at each other like, what the hell are you doing here? And so at least I had someone that I knew there. Like, I had drawn her some art and given it to her. And we've been pretty close since then. And I met a good friend called, her name's Molly, and I met her in the first mental hospital I went to. We were puzzle buddies. Like, we did a bunch of puzzles together. So I have some friends that I met in mental hospitals, but you know.
But the first one is also the same one that the Catherine Zeta-Jones goes to. So
it's very high end.
It's like a country club.
Right. Well,
That's the difference of having insurance.
That didn't do jack either.
No, they didn't. They just kept you stay at home. You weren't safe. Yeah. We needed time to get the house. Basically, you baby-proof a house when you have a baby. When you have a child that self-harms
or is
suicidal, you need time to basically child-proof your house.
So what made you, Lizzie, go to your mom? Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mary. Go ahead, finish.
Okay, go for it.
I was just going to say, what made you, Lizzie, go to your mom the time that you did when you were showing her for the first time? What inside of you?
I didn't tell her until like a week after I had started. Like, I didn't want anyone to know, but then I started having panics in my mind, like, do they suspect anything? And I'm wearing long sleeves. Do they think that's suspicious? And so then I kept getting my mind, like, hooked on things like, what would my mom think? Man, she's going to kill me. She's going to send me back to a mental hospital, which just made me cut more because I was upset. And then one night I just couldn't take it anymore being alone. So I went to her because my stomach had completely gone in knots and my brain kind of fizzled out.
Well, I'm glad that you felt as though I'm glad that you went to her and that you felt that enough trust and connection that you could speak to her about it. So can you walk us?
I can tell you that I sometimes regret it.
Do you? Why?
Because then she goes off the deep end and she yells and she freaks out and then she like does, oh, don't give me that face. You totally do. I did twice.
I love the realness.
Yeah, okay. Anyways, it's life.
Well, what mother, honestly, like anybody listening, honestly, if you're a mother and you can put yourself in Mary's shoes, I mean, what mother wouldn't kind of lose it and panic themselves? They see something like this. So it's totally understandable. I mean, there's only so much peaceful heart space you can come from if you see your child like that. I mean, it's like this fight or flight response, I'm sure, that kicks in.
Well, first comes the love and the support and the caring and the holy shit. Then comes the, I can't believe you just talked to me after I've been keeping it all together and you ask if I'm okay. Don't ask me if I'm okay after you've shown me that you've been cutting. Because I just gave you all the support I had.
And you just, like, shoved it up your ass.
Yeah, pretty much so. And, yeah, I went ballistic after that. Am I okay? No, I'm really not okay. This child who's in utero is hurting herself. And it's hurting the family, and it's hurting herself, and it's hurting me.
And then comes
the F-bomb.
Yeah.
And I just lose it.
That, and then after that, it's like that puppy dog.
And the hysterical crying.
And she's just like, come here, let me hold you. It's just like, no. You just like swore in all different languages to me. I really don't want to give you a hug right now.
Mommies go a little psycho when their babies hurt themselves. A little? Yes, damn it. We gave birth to you. We love you. I had 60 hours of labor with you. Yeah. Yes, I do. I love you.
Wow. I mean, I'm kind of feel teary listening to you because I can't even imagine what that would be like to go through. And I so can relate to both of your responses. I mean, we can have the ideal of how we'd handle something like this, but the truth is your instinct, and you get primitive when it comes down to your babies being hurt, even if it's themselves that are hurting, you know, so you probably respond the same way you would to anybody hurting somebody, you know, hurting your baby. So it must be such a confusing thing to go through. Lizzie, can I ask you? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I said you can't remove them from themselves.
Exactly. Well,
that's the hardest part.
It sounds it, definitely. So Lizzie, can you just tell me a little bit like the physical side of it? And so what happens in your mind when you're deciding to, like, what's building within you before you decide to go get a knife and cut yourself? And then can you walk us through the physical experience of it, actually cutting, and the emotions and the physical sensations and everything that goes along with it to help people understand?
Yeah, I can totally do that, but I don't use knives.
Okay. Razor blade?
Nope. Pencil sharpener. They make it so easy. Like, you buy a pencil sharpener, like, out of a kit or just out of, like, an art store. You can just, like, unscrew that little blade. They make it so easy.
Wow. I never knew that. I mean, do you care about it, like, cleaning it or disinfecting it? Like, how far do you go into the process of, like, keeping yourself safe? I mean, you can get infected. I mean, do you even care about that, or do you just do it and...
When you get to the point where, like, you're in so much pain, like you don't feel anything inside of you, you could care less if it's covered in rust.
Right. I can understand that. So walk us through, like, when you're deciding. Is it a really challenging decision when you're sitting there? Like, what are you deciding?
No way.
No?
It's not difficult at all. Like, one would think, like, before, you would think, like, how is this going to affect my family? How is it going to affect me? How is it going to affect my friends? My mind goes blank. And I don't think of anything else but dragging that little thing across my skin and seeing blood.
So do you bleed every time, obviously?
Not every time. Like, sometimes I'll just scratch, which doesn't do anything.
How does it relieve your pain, though? How does it relieve pain inside of you? Can you think of any analogies?
It kind of shows the pain that, like, goes on in your head. And, like, in that song, Iris, there's a line in there that says, you bleed just to know you're alive. Like, you can feel so dead inside, and knowing that you're bleeding, that your heart is still beating, kind of proves that you're alive and that you have something to do. You just don't know what it is.
Are you in a state of regret after you do it? Or are you just relieved?
Definitely.
Just relieve your pain?
It's definitely both. Like, afterwards, I look at it and oh man, that sounds crazy, but I smile. I love it.
That's a coping mechanism. That's like a coping mechanism. I remember being abused by my stepfather's girlfriend for a short period, and she would hit me with a belt and I would smile. Like, it was such a way to cope with it. So I can relate so much to that. It's not a smile of joy though. It's a smile of coping.
Yeah, it's kind of just like I like the way it looks and how it feels. But afterwards, like, after you can clean them and after they sting and you look down, and for me, I cut and I think, shit, how can I hide this? And so then you can try all you want. Like, you can wear bracelets over it or put makeup on it, wear long sleeves. But eventually someone will find out, whether you want them to or not. And they will kick you in the ass, as long as they love you enough.
Now, Lizzie, I know it's not something you've probably thought about, or maybe you have, but someday you may have a little 5-year-old girl that looks at your arms and say, Mommy, what happened?
Oh, I have an answer for that.
What would you say?
I actually used this once, like, at a playground. Random little kid came up, and my arms were outstretched looking at my phone, and the kid just asked, like, what happened to your arms? Because they, like, have scars. But they're not, like, white scars. They're, like, a deep brown, and it's ugly. But I told him I was in a fight, and he asked with who, and I said myself. And he asked if I won, and I said if I didn't win, then I wouldn't be here. But there's a war going on in my head, but I've lost the battle, but I can still win the war.
I think a lot of people, even today, can relate to that with our lives. You know, I think a lot of parents that are paving new ways with their kids, and we're forging through this new lifestyle. I mean, a lot of us came through to this side from pain in our childhood and our teen years, both from our culture, from the authoritarian paradigm, from abuses and injustices that kind of bring up these little battles for us even today. I mean, I'm 40, and little battles come up for me. Things are triggered, unresolved issues, and it's something that we all deal with. You gave me an analogy when we were on the phone the other day before this pre-interview discussion about a basketball court. Would you please share that? I thought that was fascinating, what you said about that. Would you mind sharing that with the listeners?
Sure. Like, when you're in the middle of a basketball court and, like, you have all these basketballs just hitting the ground and bouncing everywhere around you, and you kind of get all tensed up, and you're just waiting for a basketball to hit you. And then when it does, you're kind of relieved in a way, kind of like it justified your fear, and it, like, happened. So then you calm down a little bit. And for me, with cutting, it's kind of like being that person in the middle of a basketball court thing with all the basketballs going, and you have so much going on, and then you feel that pain, and it's kind of a relief.
I think a lot of abused
it's
kids.
Like that shock.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of abused kids. I've interviewed and spoken to a lot of, working with a lot of teens and young children talking about abuse and coping with abuse and the build up before a parent explodes, for example, using this as with the parent analogy. You know, before a parent explodes, oh, it's so intense. When or a father with a wife, for example. I mean, once they finally do unleash it, and you go through that whole process of just the build up, the pain, the release, and then the after. Oh, it's such a relief once they finally do what they need to do to you and you move on. And it sounds similar, but you're, instead of like an abusive spouse or parent, it's yourself. That's what it sounds like. So you're still cutting now, Lizzie, right?
I have not cut in 11 days.
And how are you celebrating that, Mary? Like, is it something, I mean, does your mom drive you crazy, like checking on you all the time? Like, how have you guys navigated all that?
It can get annoying because, like, if I have cut and she's just like, well, you haven't shown me in a while, can I see? And I'm kind of like in a panic and be like, no. And then she gets all like, well, why not? And it's just like, because I don't want you to. There are times, quite honestly, that Lizzie's body is mine and it's not hers. Because it's a matter of saving her life. I hate that because my mom's just like, it's not your body. I don't like it either. No, but not just that. Like, I want this lip piercing thing, and I told you we're not getting off topic. I know, I'm just saying okay, basically it's just like, it's not your body, you're not 18. Yes, you don't own it. No, I said I have to work through my prejudice. No, you said 18. Okay, we're getting off track. You're getting off track.
But basically, I try to do daily checks when I know that she's had a high emotional state. I was contacted by a friend of hers 11 days ago that Lizzie had started cutting again because she posted it on Instagram. And then she sent me the pictures and the video of Lizzie flushing the razor blade.
It's not a razor blade. Okay, and a well, what do you call it? It's just a blade. Okay, a blade. Understand that I've had all the sharps in my house locked up and safed on my kitchen counters for 6 months. So she had to go looking for this, find it, bring it home, hide it, and use it. Oh, I didn't go out looking. It was there. I found it. Yes, so I took it. Right, you didn't leave it.
How do you find out, like, Lizzie, how did you find out about the whole pencil sharpener blade? Is that something you learned online?
Yes and no. Like, I kind of learned it in my first mental hospital stay. Yeah, those lecture places. And then I looked more into it, and I actually, like, did a bunch of research on it a year before I actually started. Yeah. I noticed that she had become obsessed on her. At that time, she was using Facebook more than Tumblr and Instagram. And she posted, for probably about 6 months, she'd posted a lot of items on her page about cutting, whether it was poems or pictures or articles. She really became obsessed with it. So I think when she finally did cut, I can't say that it was a shock, but at the same time, it was just disbelief. No parent wants to believe that their child's going to hurt themselves. But at the same time, I was just waiting for the avalanche to hit. And it did. At this point, it's more on a trust basis. She has an Instagram account that I don't have access to. I choose not to have access to. I want to be able to trust her. I believe you have a Tumblr account. Oh, yeah. I don't have access to. I believe, quite honestly, that I have to trust her. And the hardest part of it all, and I think it's hard for Liz, is I've come to accept the fact that I have a child with an addiction. And that addiction may kill her someday by accident. And I have to let that go and trust that when she needs help, she will find me, and that when I'm frightened, she will respect that I need to look at her body to make sure she's safe. And I know that if someday it goes awry by accident, then her soul will be set free, and I will miss her terribly, and it will destroy her sister and myself and her stepdad and everyone else who loves her. But I can't stop her. All I can do is love her unconditionally and pray to God that's enough. Because I have nothing else I can do. I cannot remove her from herself. Only she can do that.
I think a lot of people listening who might have young kids and they haven't hit the teen years yet can't even imagine that level of acceptance that you've had to get to with actually thinking about, what if I lost her? How would I process this? I mean, that's, for you to even have to think about that must be really challenging.
It's very, very hard. It's a lot of nights of crying and a lot of unconditional love to say to her, whatever you choose, I won't support it, but I will still love you.
Now, Lizzie, do you find that, like, when your mom's like that, when she's kind of controlling and not trusting you, that it causes more anxiety and would make you more apt to hurt yourself more? Do you think if she let go and totally trusted you, like, what if she never checked again? Do you think that would be better for you emotionally?
Oh, she has never trusted me. Like, that second time I came to her about my cutting, like, she didn't send me away. No, but she straight on said that you have to earn your trust back because you have lost it completely. Yeah. And I had to, like, get dressed in front of her and take showers, and she would have to be in the room and hand me my razor to shave, and then I would have to hand it back. And it's honestly not worth it. So I should just,
Are you resentful toward your mom for that? Or do you understand? Like, how do you feel?
Both. I can resent against it because I really want to. Like today, I really, really, really wanted to. So badly.
Why? Why did you want to cut yourself today?
Just a bunch of shitty memories. Like, this stupid song someone dedicated it to me, and it came on the radio multiple times, and I was sitting in the car with some friends, and I started crying, and then we got to our destination, and I just kind of sat there thinking and trying to get my mind off of it, and just kind of trying to ignore it.
Well, if there's anybody listening that can connect with you both and offer you any kind of love and support, I know that you would welcome it. I know that we talked a couple days ago about this interview, and I suggested starting a Facebook page, maybe for listeners who have children. You don't have to have teens that cut. You could have teens that are going through anything, whether it's alcohol abuse, drug abuse, any kind of addictive behavior or psychological issue. I think children who are parented in a partnership paradigm, like I said, are not immune to issues coming up, whether it's past or present issues or cultural or whatever. This is reality. So how can we work in partnership with our kids? It sounds like this is like a trial and error thing for you, Mary, knowing how to handle this.
Oh God, yes. There's no support for parents. There's parents. It's a silent thing. We all suffer in silence. No one talks about it because it's shameful. And the hospitals offer no support groups. Doctors offer no support groups. Psychiatrists, psychologists don't put the parents in touch with one another, nor do they help the parents. So we're just all out here floundering. So it's absolutely trial and error. And I think even if there was support groups, each child is different and each relationship is different.
Right. It seems like a lot of when I was researching this topic, most of the advice given was more control and punishing, and it sounded really kind of abusive, the information given toward, which would just perpetuate this awful. Right,
I agree.
So, I mean,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you're kind of paving new trails with all of this, living in partnership with her, and that would be really helpful for people, I'm sure, where this movement, this kind of awareness and is growing for children's rights.
Yeah. It's very hard to trust her, but at the same time, I also need to know, what she's doing on her body so that if she does need medical attention, whether she's cut too deep, if it needs stitches or something, that's what I need to be aware of. At this point, checking her into another psych ward would not be beneficial. But knowing whether or not it's deep enough she needs stitches or butterflying, that's a medical necessity. What's butterflying? Butterflying is when it's not big enough where you need stitches, but you need something it's almost like a Band-Aid that puts both sides together to keep it closed. Oh. That's why I do inspections.
So, I mean, one thing we were talking about was that, Lizzie, that this is a filling a need. A lot of people like to judge it and focus on the behavior, the cutting, but the kind of way to wellness or helping somebody with something like this is focusing on the need under the behavior. So cutting is indeed a tool for you to have a need met. Albeit it's not the healthiest way. We are aware of that after this conversation, but it is a tool and it could be worse. We talked about, people do, drugs, they overdose. This is a way that you're having your needs met. And what have you replaced that with? If you don't have a way to release the pain, what kind of coping tools are you using now?
Currently, whenever I get into that state of mind, I put on my favorite TV show, which is Supernatural. So I kind of zone into that, or I'll put on music, or I'll do some artwork, or play my guitar, or bang on my drums.
That sounds pretty great.
Anything but taking the blade, no matter how much I want to.
Well, Lizzie, I thank you so much for coming on, and I know that you told me your intention for doing this was to help other teens, and that is so commendable. I'm so impressed with you being so real and honest and vulnerable. It couldn't have been easy to put yourself out there like this and be seen, and I hope if any teens are listening or parents of teens that they connect with you, because ever since I met you, there was something so special about you. You're such an inspiration, and I want you to know that it's people that go through rough times that go on to change the world. So whatever the future holds for you, I know you're meant for greatness.
Aw, thank you. Can I say something?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Never start cutting. Ever. You will die and you will regret it. I might be exaggerating a little bit. I think the regretting part is correct. Yeah. Just don't ever start.
If anybody wants to know Lizzie's Facebook group, what is the Facebook group really quick?
The Cutting Edge Support.
Okay, the Cutting Edge Support. Type that into Facebook or message me and I'll get you connected with that. So thank you both so much for helping us tonight.